Queensland Greens Senator Larissa, thanks for joining us today. One of the biggest issues for both you and the Australian Party appears to be coal seam gas. I'm wondering if there have been any discussions between the two parties on forming some sort of alliance.
Well, look, we're really happy to have any company on coal seam gas because, unfortunately, the big parties are in bed with the industry, and we've seen a massive amount of community concern, and still the government and the opposition are failing to address the huge concerns that people have with coal seam gas. Now, we still don't know what it's going to do to our water table, and we still don't know if it's even that much better for the climate than coal, and yet the government has given it the big tick and the opposition's backing it to the hilt. So we're really pleased that the Australia Party is having a good look at the science and standing with us and saying, actually, let's press pause until we know if this is safe for our environment, for our climate, for our rural communities. So we'll certainly be looking forward to having discussions with Mr Katter and other members of his party in Queensland as the months roll by. But we hope that that comes to the point where they can back our bills in the Senate.
And I can't imagine there's going to be a whole lot of issues on which you'll agree?
No, look, I think there's one, that's really the one point of commonality at this stage, but look, we're really happy to keep talking about that, and I just think it's good that Queensland has a bit of choice. We've got an entrenched two-party system that I don't think does anybody any favours, and in a genuine democracy, people need to have some choice. So we really welcome the fact that they're a new entrant onto the political scene, and we wish them all the best in the upcoming state election.
You alluded to the debate about how much cleaner coal seam gas is compared to coal. It is, though, agreed that it's cleaner to some extent. So given the state of the world's CO2 emissions, the need to reduce them, is there any way that you really can block CSG? Is it not the lesser of two evils?
Well, so look, I hear you, but unfortunately the science that they're basing those assumptions on isn't Australian-based, and it's not actually looking at coal seam gas. So there is still question marks about whether it's cleaner or not. And my point about that is, even if it is a little bit cleaner, it's still never going to be as clean as renewable energy, and it's still doing massive damage to our farmland. Is it really worth it? I think when we've got to weigh up, we've got alternatives for energy production, but we don't have any alternatives for food production. And here in this most driest inhabited continent on the planet, we've really got to look after our water resources, or we're going to find strife in continuing to be a net food exporter as years to come. So, look, I think we need to do that Australian study, work out how much cleaner is it, and if it's significantly cleaner or is it just a little bit cleaner. We still need to resolve those issues about the damage it's doing to our food-producing land.
Given, though, some of the warnings about the world reaching a tipping point in regards to CO2 emissions in just a few years, could it not at least be a stopgap measure?
Well, look, I don't know about that. I think the latest reports from the International Energy Agency, a respected international agency, have said that actually we need to stop building fossil fuel infrastructure by 2017 if we are to have any chance of keeping global warming to less than 2 degrees, which is what most of the science says we need to do, or we'll see just horrific impacts that doesn't bear thinking about. So that's very telling. That's not a lot of time before we've got to switch to clean energy. Now, obviously, we can't do that overnight, as you say, but in recent years, there's been an awful lot of favouritism given to fossil fuels to the tune of anywhere between $9 and $11 billion, depending on how you look at the figures. So is it any wonder that renewables are a bit on the back foot? It's been not a level playing field. I think we need to level that playing field, take away those fossil fuel subsidies, give renewables a boost, and you'll see them roll out really quickly, and they will be genuinely clean. And the other good point, Tom, is that in fact a lot of the reports say that renewable energy is more job intensive. So it actually creates more jobs creating clean energy. Now that's just a fantastic outcome. And I'd really love to see Queensland being a leader in solar thermal technology, which is kind of like the new U-Butte solar way of using the sun to power our homes baseload 24/7. So it doesn't really have any downsides. It's a fantastic opportunity for Queensland, and here in the Sunshine State we should be harnessing that, as well as our wind and wave technology and our geothermal deposits. We've got other options, we just need to look at them.
One energy source you haven't mentioned is nuclear. I know that's not ever been a part of the Greens program or policy, but could it also be a stopgap solution? It is the only known source of very, very low carbon emissions, just to have something in place in that tipping point time.
Look, I think the risks are just too great, Tom. We've got no lasting solution to the problem of nuclear waste. Sure, it's operating in some other countries, but they still don't have a long-term disposal solution that we know is safe. I don't want to risk the future generations' future on that. And in fact, there's not actually a lot of high-grade uranium stores in this place on the planet. There's actually we would run out of high-grade uranium pretty quickly. So I think for the time and investment that it would take to get it up and running, you'd find that there wouldn't be any payoffs, and then you'd have this legacy of toxic nuclear waste. And of course, there's the huge problem of nuclear proliferation. And we've seen, in my view, the very foolish decision of the Australian government to export our uranium to India, which is in an arms race with Pakistan. So we're providing nuclear fuel to some pretty flammable, in a pretty flammable situation here. Look, I think that's a very dangerous way to go. And when we've got clean energy alternatives that we know work, that we know create jobs, and that we know don't create toxic nuclear waste and won't fuel an arms race, that's the way to go. I mean, it's a pretty clear situation, we think.
So what are some of the other major issues the Greens will be campaigning on here in Queensland?
Well, look, coal seam gas is obviously the main one, and it's an interesting one, Tom, because it's not just rural communities that are concerned about their future, it's also urban communities. They want to be eating locally produced food, and they want to know that we've got a robust economy and that we've got a good, strong rural constituency and good, strong community there. So coal seam gas is a really important one. But look, health and education, and we saw in the last week or two yet more debacles with Queensland Health. And unfortunately, the state government's response was to effectively create yet another bureaucracy to try and deal with the problems. Look, I think people are a bit sick of massive bureaucracies. I think they just want to know that people are being kept healthy, that we've got enough hospital beds, that we've got enough doctors and nurses on the front line, that we don't have a whole lot of administration, but we actually have frontline services, and that we've got a little bit of focus on things like preventative health care, which can actually keep people out of hospital. A lot of the incidents which see people taken into hospital are preventable. And dental care is perhaps the best example of that. We've got a proposal at the moment which we're hoping to get support for in the federal parliament to bring dental care into Medicare. So we've called it Denticare. And the beauty of that is that you would then basically make dental care free. And a lot of the research says that, I think it's 67%, in fact, of hospital entrants are from poor dental health, which just is remarkable. The figure seems ridiculous. But clearly, dental health matters, and if your teeth aren't well, then your body's not going to be well. So we'd really like to see dental care made more affordable and brought into that Medicare system, because I know, I shouldn't admit this, but personally it's the first thing that drops off my budget, and no one likes going to the dentist anyway, but it's really important that we make that more available for people. So yeah, I think preventative health care is a big one, and of course some good funding for our schools, because our kids are the way of the future. My little girl's not quite in school yet, and I'm fortunate enough to live in an area where I've got really good public schools, but we need to make sure that our public schools are of a really high standard everywhere across the state.
Campbell Newman is urging voters not to vote for minorities. He's citing some of the complexities of the federal arrangement. Do you think the minority government in Canberra, and at times its dysfunctionality, is that going to hurt voters and scare them off voting for the Greens?
No, look, I don't think so, Tom. And I don't think that... I would certainly not describe the government, the parliament situation as dysfunctional. I think people aren't used to a minority government. They're used to a government being in charge and being able to ram things through, but that doesn't mean they like it that way. I actually think that the voters and the people want some discussion, they want some negotiation, and frankly they want their representatives to act like adults and to sit around a table, work out the points of difference and get on with it. That's the message that I hear loud and clear from people around the state. They see question time as an absolute farce, and they're appalled that their taxpayer dollars are going to supporting that sort of behaviour. So I think really that the minority government is showing that when you have to negotiate, when you need to sit around a table, you get better outcomes. Arguments get fleshed out, details get organised, you get a better outcome in the end. So I certainly would urge people to vote Green in the state election. But an important thing is our preferential system. People can have two bites at the cherry. They can vote Green, and then if they feel that one of the other parties deserves their support, they can give them a number 2. They don't have to in Queensland, but they can if they want to. And that's a really powerful message, because that way you can send the message that you actually like Greens policies best and that you want that progressive, long-term approach from your representatives, a system that puts our environment first, a sustainable economy, good healthcare, good education, and protection for our kids' future. But if your Greens candidate isn't successful, then you can still make sure that your vote goes to the major party of your choice. So it's a really powerful way of voting, and would certainly be encouraging everyone to vote one Green and then make up their own mind, do any of the other parties deserve their preference.